everyone. Welcome to Sonographers in the Cities. I'm Lynn.
And I'm Giselle.
Happy very first day of July and happy summer. Our baby podcast has been growing for about 9 months now, right? Exactly. Kind of because we started the first day of October or the first Friday. So I wanted to share some stats with you all. We have reached over 9,000 downloads, reached over 30 countries, and over 10,000 cities in the world.
Wow. Dang. What? 10,000?
Yeah.
That's a lot. What? There's no way. I haven't looked at the stats. That's cool.
Yeah, I was just looking at last night and I was like 10,000. I think 10,000 is like the number right now because you also reached over 10,000 on your YouTube channel.
That's crazy.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Wow, that's insane. I mean, you're also part of the journey and why we're growing too on there. So thank you for being part of it. And this is crazy. Wow, we are so grateful for all the support. Who knew that in like less than a year we would get this far? I mean, it's pretty insane.
Yeah, and it's and our podcast is still a baby.
Yeah,
We're still learning. We're still trying to figure everything out.
Mm-hmm. It's been really cool though. I mean, I've seen a lot of, and I listen to podcasts like from other types of things like The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. I listen to those podcasts and other people that I follow on YouTube and people that I look up to and stuff like that. So it's really cool and interesting to see how it actually unfolds because I listen to already like established podcasts, and for us to have our own, it's really cool. And just to know people are listening, it's a weird feeling and experience to know that people are like listening to us talk. And we're just like talking about random stuff.
I mean, we started because we wanted to talk about sonography to each other. And with so many of you guys who are listening around the world, thank you so much for being a part of this journey with us. And if you are anywhere in the world outside of the US, you can feel free to send us a message because we want to know who you are. And thank you for your support.
Yeah, thank you guys. We're super excited for this kind of like shift. I know it's summertime and people are, not in, some people aren't in school because they're taking breaks, and then others who are still looking into ultrasound or trying to figure out how to join or become part of the community. And I still am getting a ton of messages of like people who are looking into the field. So it's really awesome to see that we can share our knowledge with you guys. And I have like 5 years of experience so far in growing. Lynn is
I have
almost
0.
she's almost gonna graduate. So
I have student experience.
Yeah, that's a lot of experience. I mean, you're in it, and a lot of you guys who are currently in their programs, a lot of people look up to you guys, especially the ones that are on social media. So it's really cool to know that we have this community and platform to share what once was not a thing. And so having this podcast and talking to you guys and you, Lynn, like it's been really cool to see. So we're kind of going into this new type of series with the podcast a little bit for the next few weeks, which is diving in deeper with ultrasound. And so, before we dive in deeper, we want you guys to know that this podcast is here for you guys. Each podcast has so much information in it that, I just love sharing it with everyone because it's stuff that you won't really find on the internet when you're like Googling something, right? It's like real conversation that we are talking about and behind the scenes, truly. So it's a really good way to learn about ultrasound. And we're going to talk about today the pros and cons about ultrasound and dive into the different modalities and talk to people who have different specialties. And it's just going to be really cool, really fun time to be part of ultrasound. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that and excited for everything that's to come for the following weeks. I can't believe it's already July.
I can't either. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for summer. I'm so excited for us to be diving deeper into the specialties because I know for the past 9 months we've been just, you know, doing very superficial information about sonography just to make sure, or not make sure, but just to, you know, uh, present anything and everything about sonography there is for everyone to that wants to learn. Um, Also, I apologize for the noise in my background because they're doing something outside and I can't help it.
Oh, man, you should yell out the window. You know, like they do in like New York movies? Like
Yeah,
yell
no,
at people.
they're not gonna do anything. They
I'm
just
filming
ignore you.
a podcast. Oh, but that's so cool though. I mean, it's cool to know that there's so many cities, so many people that resonate with the things that we do and say, and there's always going to be somebody out there who understands you in some sort of capacity and way. So it's really nice to have this community to talk about whatever it is. And even though you're in New York, I'm in Las Vegas, a lot of these things are very similar and we can relate on things. And I like talking about the differences too. East
Yeah,
Coast versus West Coast is actually there's a lot of differences between the things that we all go through, but a lot of it's very similar. So this episode today is going to be really interesting to hear your pros and cons as a student versus like my pros and cons as being in this field for a while now. So, are you ready to dive deep into your cons and your pros? I feel like there's probably more pros than cons,
yeah,
hopefully.
definitely. Yep, I'm ready. Are you?
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. So, Giselle,
Me.
let's start with a pro and then we're not gonna be so structured on like here
Mm,
are all the pros, here are the cons. So we're just gonna just talk about what we think is a pro and what we think is a con in a
mhm.
conversation way. So Giselle,
Okay.
what is a pro, like the most pro for you for sonography?
So we'll talk about this is like my I guess these are like my personal pros and cons and also Lynn's personal pros and cons. If you guys YouTube it, there's like a ton of videos now where a bunch of different sonographers and students talk about their pros and cons with sonography. So, there's a lot of pros, what I usually like to say, but there's always usually some kind of con that attaches to the pro. Um, but I think the one that everyone kind of thinks about the most is probably the work-life balance with the pay and everything like that. I think for me, that's one of the pros personally, because I know I can make a lot of money if I really want to make a lot of money, and I know I can have a lot of time off if I really want to have a lot of time off. Because the opportunity in ultrasound to get a job and get paid well, obviously it's healthcare, right? So you can get paid really well. And I think that's like one of the top highest, like people look into a career. They're like, how much am I going to get paid? So, that's a pro because obviously healthcare gets paid well. I think still we deserve a lot more than what we get around the United States. But personally, I think that's a pro. I get paid out here in Las Vegas. We get paid pretty well for new grads and people with experience. So
That's
that's my
awesome.
first pro.
So what would be the con that attaches to that pro?
So I feel like when it comes to, the work-life balance, starting off can be really hard because a major problem that is out there are people who are trying to get a job with no experience. And they have absolutely, just clinicals, coming out of clinicals, and you're trying to get a job. If you're not networking and things like that, it can be really hard. That's one of the things that is very difficult for a lot of students coming out of school is getting a job, which is why we always talk about how can you get a job. But the con is that one, it's hard to get a job and you won't be able to, like, let's say, get a full-time position right away because so many people do like their job and they stay there and they don't retire, they don't leave. So I talked about this in one of my videos where it's kind of strange it's hard to get a job because they want you to have experience, but then also there's a lot of positions open, but some people don't fit that position. So it just can be really difficult coming out of school. And that's, I think, one of the cons that students find themselves in right after. Um, Attached to that work-life balance is like sometimes they work you really hard because they're so short staffed. And that's just also part of the medical field and something that happened, I think, more recently after the pandemic. A lot of people left their jobs and a lot of hospitals aren't paying, what they should or aren't hiring how they should. So a lot of that's like the politics of the job and career. So while you can have a work-life balance and get paid well and, you can have a great career and opportunity, the con to that is that sometimes that doesn't happen doesn't happen right away, obviously, but it's a struggle to get to that point. Like I think you have to work almost twice as hard just to be satisfied because it took me 4 years to get a full-time position. It's not going to be like that for everyone. I see a lot of students who are getting full time right away because they need it in their area. But just know that that's part of what may happen when you graduate, especially if you don't already have a job lined up. This is because not everyone gets that, right? Not everyone gets lucky enough to get hired right away. So that is a con of the field, which I'm sure you'll be fine after you graduate.
I
But
was nodding my head as you were saying. I was like, oh yes, that makes sense. And then I kept thinking, I was like, oh yes, I know this person who got the job or this person who is still looking for jobs and stuff.
yeah,
So
like
it's
I know
definitely
people
really
on two
relatable.
Yeah, I know people on 2 ends of the spectrum, people who are having a hard time and people who are getting hired right away. So it just really depends, but that is something people have to think about. What about you? So what's your first pro?
Well, coming as a student, I love how sonography, like this is what everyone says, like we are the doctor's eyes, we are the medical provider's eyes. We're the first step in diagnosing process, and we get to that moment when you just put the probe on a patient and you see what's inside their body in real time. That's definitely the pro. Yeah, other like imaging modalities, like yes, you see them in real time, but the machine does it for you. I like how it is very operator dependent. Like you can put a probe at the neck and you see carotids, or you put it in the abdomen and you see all the abdominal vasculature that's going on and all the blood flows. Um, so it's just very fascinating to see, like when you're doing it. And yeah, I think it's just there's that value in being the first step of the diagnosing process, with especially with nowadays, with everyone who has a lot of health conditions there are out there, and you never know like what you see and all that stuff, but that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a very good pro to think about because when people are looking for their career, like what they want to do, I think to find a career that's fulfilling in that sort of aspect, like you're part of something and you know that you're a part of something good, like you're helping these patients and I always like think about how I want the patient to be treated, how I would want myself to be treated or my family members to be treated. And I think a lot of people in this career are very good at taking care of their patients. Um, so that's a really good pro. Like we are the first line of defense. I think we've talked about this multiple times
Yes.
where doctors really do love ultrasound and they'll order ultrasound because one is one of the easier tests to do, compared to everything else. So they think, right? That could be another conversation, but it is though considered as an easier modality to do, cheaper for them to do ultrasounds than CAT scans, MRIs, and things like that. And you can see things right away. I think what comes with that is a lot of trust. The doctors trust us a lot. And sometimes to the point where they even trust us to ask them for what we see when we're not supposed to tell them what we see. But that also tells you like they do trust sonographers. It's a lot to handle and know that you're being so needed in this field and in the healthcare industry. And that's why I think we want to spread so much ultrasound awareness because we do so much and it's such a big part of healthcare.
Yeah, like sonography is like so important to the point where I just thought of this as you were saying how doctors really needed it, like point of care ultrasound. I know of someone who she's a doctor and her hospital have her do point of care ultrasound training.
Mhm.
It's just so that like that's in need of like that at that moment to see what's going on, you
Yeah.
know? I think that's really, really cool. That's how important sonography is.
Yeah, so important. They'll be like, "Oh, we need an ultrasound, like stat." And there's a lot of important things about ultrasound that, like, other modalities don't have. It differentiates a lot, but it's definitely a very much so growing field. So that's another pro. Like, we're gonna need more sonographers. We're still gonna continue to grow. A lot of hospitals are in need, so that's a very, very high pro up there on the list. Like, it's not like it's gonna go extinct anytime soon because you need to have a human being behind the probe. Eventually, how they always are like, oh, robots will take over our jobs. It's like, I don't think that'll happen in our lifetime, hopefully.
Mhm.
But yeah, even then, I think that they order so many and they need so much of it, which can also be a con in a way. Um, they definitely really need us. And the reason why I say it could be a con is that sometimes you're overworked as a sonographer, and a lot of times it's just so busy, you can't even take a break to sit down. I think one of the cons that I would have to say, in my experience, is that a lot of places they almost abuse ultrasound because it's so quick and easy and fast to do, but then they also don't realize the things that we have to do as sonographers. One thing that you'll hear from a lot of experienced people are that they give you 15 minutes for patient scan when you know that you still have to get the patient in the room, get their history, have them get ready for the test, then perform the test, and then have them leave, and then you have to clean the room and get ready for the next one. So that's a whole thing where I think burnout comes into play. So I think it's very easy to be burnt out from this field. So I think that's a con.
Yes. So to follow up with that, one of the big cons that I have or that I can think of relating to how much needed we are as sonographers and how much dependent or operator dependent this is that it's a con is that it takes a toll on our bodies. Like I'm a student and I feel it already,
Mhm,
and obviously I'm still like trying to learn the most efficient way to scan like different studies, but like adding with what just I just said, like sonographers being overworked, being over or like kind of abused.
mhm.
It does take a toll on your body. So I think that's a big con because yes, we care for the patients, but and kind of hurting ours, our
Mhm.
body in
Yeah.
return. So
Yep. I think that's the number one con that people will hear about from sonographers. And there is that statistic out there where 90% of sonographers are scanning in pain. And I think a lot of students will message me about, hey, do you think it's worth it? Do you think it's worth doing this career because I don't want to like hurt my body? Because that's the number
mhm,
one thing that shows on the internet is like that we are in pain. And it's with anything else because you're going to be in repetitive motions when you scan these patients. You're going to be in awkward positions. You're going to be holding a transducer. Like, we're not meant to like do those things for 8 to 10, 12 hours a day. And yet, here we are doing that. And it's something that we have to keep in mind that there's ergonomics. Ergonomics meaning how you are holding the probe, how you're scanning a patient, how you're sitting, how you're standing. And if you're aware of all that, you can prevent it. It's all about prevention, but just know that that is a huge con in this field. But stretch. There's a lot of things you can do, work out, and be focused on your own health and your mental health. On top of that, physical health is very important in this field. So, but it's funny because I totally forgot about. I always forget about it until someone brings it up. But like being in the field too,
Hmm.
don't think about it as much as you were maybe in the beginning when you aren't really thinking about it, and then all of a sudden you have all this pain because you're trying so hard. But for me, 5 years later, now down the road, it's like I'm aware of hoping not to hurt myself, because there have been a few times where I've pushed too hard, or like I did something with my shoulder and I'm like, oh my gosh, it hurts. But there are also things I do to like for maintenance and care, and like I try to do better for myself and my body so I can go longer, right? There's a lot of people who've done this for a long time who don't have any pain. So, just be aware of that, that's a huge
They
deal.
need to tell us their secrets.
I know. I know. Tamika's one of them. If you guys know her, I've got this times two on YouTube. She says that she's never really had pain. She's been doing it for over 20 years. I'm like, how you do that?
Super, super, superhuman.
Hmm.
But yeah, I was thinking like work related injuries, it could be any job because
Hmm.
you're doing it repetitively, right? Like what you said, Giselle. Just you're doing the same motion day after day after day. So if you're a sonographer, you're scanning, you're pushing, you're extending your arms. If you're working in the office, you're just sitting and typing, carpal tunnels.
Right.
Or so like any job has the risk of work related injuries. So
Yeah.
so it's there. You just have to find a way to prevent it.
Just
But
be aware.
mhm,
And we can probably do a whole episode on that itself.
definitely.
But yeah, there's a lot of pros and there's a lot of cons. And just know that either way, you have to find a career where it fits your lifestyle and what you want. Because I could tell you the pros and cons for many jobs, and yet people still do those jobs. Why? Because they want to be in that field, or they want to do that. They find out that that's their calling or their passion. So whether you feel like these cons are like worth it or not, that's everyone's individual choice. And obviously a lot of sonographers like what they do and they love their job, and they are really fascinated by the body and anatomy, helping patients, being in the healthcare, being part of a team, and also being independent at the same exact time. So we can talk so much good about sonography and also so much bad about sonography, but you have to ultimately decide, like, is this a field that you want to go in and sacrifice the cons for? And I found that over time, just learning about ultrasound, I really enjoy being in this career even before it got big on social media. Like, I really love the fact that it was a job where you're independent, you are very much so counted on, you use your brain to think throughout the whole entire scan. It's not just like you're just taking random pictures. And I absolutely love that there's no radiation and it's a pretty quick test. Like, there's so many pros that I think the pros really outweigh the cons, in my opinion, for myself. And just know that there's so many good things about ultrasound. If you ask any sonographer, a lot of them will say they like their job. And then, there's also a lot of people who say they don't like it. I've seen on Facebook groups, which is very interesting. I don't know if you've seen those posts where they're like, would you do it again or not? And half the people say they would, and half the
Oh
people say they
yes, I
wouldn't.
have.
So that just goes to show, like, it doesn't fit everybody, but also if it's your calling or something you're very passionate about, like it's a great field to go into. And you can always like switch into this field or switch out of the field. It's very versatile. There's so much opportunity. There's so many different places you can work. I don't know. That's from my experience and being in it for 5 years. You still have so much more to learn about it. And you can see like the things that you really like about it and things that you don't like about it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm starting to see already like what I don't like and what I do like. But what hits like resonates to me the most is like I love it because despite like if I can see don't see myself working in this environment or in this place, but I still once I close the door, I love what I do. I love what I'm learning. That's how I know that I love
Mhm.
sonography.
Yeah.
Despite like if I, you have a bad workplace, that could be a cons too. Your coworkers, the physicians, your colleagues, patients. Like we can dive deeper. This like what we've talked about is just like the biggest cons and pros, very superficial for sonography.
Mhm.
Would you agree?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's so much more. I'm sure you guys could hear so many more things that people complain about or talk about. But then also, they have to remember that there's reasons why you go into this field, right? There's reasons why nurses become nurses. There's reasons why
Mhm.
doctors become doctors. And there's so many cons to every job. But are the cons worth getting through? You gotta think about it that
Yeah,
way. And I mean, I love my job. 5 years later, I still love it, and you can see everyone on social media who still love it, and hopefully the passion that you have for it right now as a student, you keep that and it keeps growing and growing. Like, you want that to keep on helping you through your days, because it
hmm
is stressful, it is tough. I have so many days where I'm, like, so frustrated, and I'm like, "Should I keep doing this?" But at the end of the day, I still wanna keep doing it because I love ultrasound.
hmm
And there's gonna be hard days, but the pros are what keep you going. I mean, the pay definitely keeps me here. If I didn't have to have, like if I was, like, so rich and had all this money and whatnot, like, obviously, I wouldn't, you know I would look for something else that's more fulfilling for me, but the pay is, like, really good, I think, in ultrasound compared to a lot of other careers. So that's what keeps a lot of people, and we always talk about we don't want you guys to go into something that just for the money, but we want you to do something that you really enjoy and the money will come with it. Like, it really is find something that you're passionate about. Just the money is a really big pro for me personally. I don't know about other people, but it depends on your lifestyle and what you want.
definitely, and where you are too.
So hopefully Lynn keeps that positive attitude about ultrasound. I
Yeah,
know it gets hard.
it does. Like right now, it already does. But and I'm not even done with school yet.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's fascinating to me, and I will. I know it will because I actually was looking to pursue a higher degree
Mhm.
because I want to learn more. So definitely will. Obviously, I will keep you guys posted.
Yeah. Yep. This is a field, you guys, that you could
Mhm.
keep on learning every single day. Every single, scan, you learn something new. And there's a lot of growth. People will say there's not. There are people out there who will say like there's no growth in sonography,
Mhm.
but then also you have to realize there's other things you can do. Shaping the future of ultrasound is also a growth in itself because you want to learn as much as you can and giving that back to somebody else. Like we are taught so much by people that the sonographers out there, everyone's taught by different people. So we want better sonography for the future, right? You want your parents and your kids and your family members to have really good health care, right? And I think it all comes down to us wanting to spread that knowledge and help others. And there's just so many good things about the field that I think people should think about because it is really sonography is not known to the masses like nurses and doctors. And I think that we really want to spread that this field is a really good field to be in, regardless of all the cons that come up.
And that's why we do this, right?
Yeah,
That's why we
yes,
do. That's
exactly.
why we want to spread awareness for sonography so that one day it will be known to the masses, like nurses and doctors, because the profession is growing, and the only way that we can keep up with it is if we grow ourselves.
Grow with it, and technology is getting better, so that's
Yeah,
pretty
so
fun.
it's only advancing.
But we definitely appreciate you guys, and we hope that you guys enjoy this episode. There are still more pros and cons out there. Definitely look up on YouTube. I've got a full video on it. I know multiple sonographers out there that have full videos on it, and see what they have to say and just see if it fits you and your life and what you want in your future. And just know that there's a lot out there to do and look into. Even if you don't want to do ultrasound, there's a lot of pros and cons to the healthcare field, and other jobs that might fit you too. Thanks for listening, you guys.
Yes, thank you. And we will talk to you next week.
Yes, we'll talk
Hope
to
you
you
have
guys
a
in the
good
next
week.
episode. Hope you have a good week. Enjoy the summer. If you're on break or if you're in school, study hard. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank
Bye bye.
you. Bye.